Welcome to Panda Head Studios. Today we're talking about Mobile Suit Gundam, Blooded Orphans, Season 1.
So, Season 1 follows a group of child soldiers starting off working for a group called CGS before very shortly rebelling against them and taking over and starting a new group which they call Tekkadan. And it follows their very first job, which is to transport this individual that the public knows as the Maiden of Revolution, Cordelia Ina Bernstein. And it follows the trials and tribulations of that type of a job, along with the fact that on Earth, there's this group, military group called Gallahorn, which is consistently trying to stop Tekkadan from getting Cordelia to Earth, because her whole goal is to bring about Mars's independence from Earth.
Everything about this show should be good, because it's good.
I wish.
Yeah, there's nothing new, nothing original, not even Gundam, the Gundam side of things. There's probably even better written Gundam shows.
There are.
Oh.
Like, the reality is there are.
I wish it was entertaining for me, because it has everything I love about giant robots. It has giant robots fighting and absolutely just senseless use of them.
Yeah,
and it's dialogue. Everything is just weak about it. The story beats, the characters' arcs, they're wooden and hollow.
Especially Mikazuki.
Yeah, Mikazuki is the main protagonist of the show, and he has absolutely no character arc whatsoever. He's good at everything. Nothing challenges him, and anytime there's anything remotely challenging him, he easily overcomes it within an instant. Even in moments where they show him training, he's great. He doesn't really need the training as much as it's just keeping himself from being rusty.
Yeah.
And that's like one of the greatest weaknesses in a giant fighting robot show, where they put all the effort into that. The art style, that's where it looks good, is the robots. Everything else does not look that great for the most part. Like characters, the environment, it's all bad except for the giant robots. Even the spaceships, I've seen better looking spaceships.
Yeah.
And like the fighting, for example, how bad it is like in manga, it looks great when you see giant robots or characters, they'll like attack, and then one will just like disappear, and then the person will be, where'd he go? And then you see them like coming in for an attack, and then they appear and do some decisive blow, or deal a significant, or outright defeat the character. But in this, the action stinks. It's terrible. The action is terrible. They'll attack and then teleport and then deal a decisive blow and then teleport again, and it just keeps cutting away from the action. For all the effort they put into the robots, the action is so weak.
Yeah.
And then Mikazuki's whole reason for doing everything is just because he's blindly loyal to Orga.
Yeah.
And shows almost no emotions.
Yeah, that's very true. I think there's one particular fight that I can think of where, he does ultimately win it because, main protagonist powers. But it's the only fight he ever has that really puts any threat to him. And it's the final fight of the season, where he's fighting an individual from Gallahorn called Ein, who's a whole other problem. And Ein pushes him to his limit, to push past his limits, and it causes him to lose function of his right arm and his right eye. And they even mention and even then it's not that big a deal, because at the very end, the post-battle discussion stuff, he mentions, oh, I can use it as long as I'm still attached to Barbatos, which is his Gundam frame unit, which I agree looks awesome. But it ultimately means that, great, he has a problem with his body, but ultimately he doesn't. And I agree. Again, he has no emotions. There's 2 times where he has emotions, and those 2 times are really, really good. Which is one, Shortly after they form Tekkadan, two Gallahorn agents show up and are investigating the situation and what happened. And the driver of the vehicle is a character named Galio, and Mikazuki's like off working a field or something, and he hears his friend Biscuit, his little sister's Cookie and Cracker, scream, and he comes running out of the thing and sees Cookie and Cracker on the ground, not moving, and Galio getting out of the vehicle, and it looks great, but he runs up, grabs Galio by the throat, pins him against the car, and is threatening to kill him.
And doesn't even acknowledge Galio, who he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't." Galio does apologize. He's like, "Oh, that wasn't on purpose." He tries to explain the situation, and immediately just boom, right?
Yeah. And you see rage in his face, and the only other time you see anything remotely like anger or any emotion is near the end of the series when Orga is having doubts about what they're doing in the job and basically having an existential crisis. And he confronts Orga and he talks to him. And the way he talks to him is basically like, because ever since they were children, Orga kept talking about he'll get them to a place that's beautiful where they belong off Mars, this like idealistic sort of lifestyle. And Mikazuki confronts him by going, "Is this because they're on a train in Antarctica or something like, or the Arctic or something like that?" I forget where the train is, to be honest.
I think it's Siberia, but that's
it's sort of irrelevant. But Mikazuki confronts him and is like, "Is this where you wanted us to be? Is this the place you told me about? Is this our final destination? Is this where we belong?" And that's the only other time you see him have emotions. It's pushing Orga. Other than that, he's a stick.
And I like at first I thought maybe they're doing it for the same reason they did it in Twilight, was so you could attach yourself to that character because they're such a blank slate.
Oh, but you can't.
You can't. He is enough of his own character to where you can't attach yourself to him. And the only thing that I really liked about him was his loyalty to Orga and his family.
Yeah.
And that's one of my favorite characters of the show is Orga. He's the leader of Tekkadan. He's pretty much everyone's like driving force to where their goals are. He's pretty much, he gets to make all the decisions, and he has a pretty decent arc of growth to where he starts out as just like a naive leader who convinced a bunch of child soldiers to rebel, and then he makes mistakes while he's trying to like establish the business that he has taken over when he created Tekkadan, and then how he recognized the consequences of those decisions and how that shapes him, and then the reactions of the characters around him shaping him even more to where at the end he is he's a lot more like grizzled leader who really recognizes the necessity of his actions and is a lot more willing to do what's needed to be done to succeed, to where Biscuit says like you're so focused on the goal you're being reckless.
And you're being reckless and taking shortcuts.
Yeah, and it's a great little check, except for he's not. What shortcuts is he taking? That's what a good leader would do. Is like, there's a faster way, there's a more efficient way. Let's get this job. Let's recognize. But that's like the cool thing is that it creates like so in the few moments to there's actually something you can question and like reason on either side.
Yeah.
Then when Biscuit dies, he recognizes. What Orga recognizes that like how like the real impact and cost of everything, and that's like such a great shaping moment for him. I wish he was more of a main focus than Mikazuki, even though he gets a great deal of screen time. He doesn't do anything exciting besides just make decisions.
Yeah, that is very true. And I find it really interesting that, like, I think for me, like, where I really started to see that change in him is there's this group that they end up partnering with called the Turbans, which is part of a larger conglomerate called Tewaz, which they eventually end up a part of. But the big thing is, especially with the Turbans, because that's who they deal with a lot, especially the leader of the Turbans, who there's a time where Orga and him are having a meeting, and Orga's questioning what he's doing. Is it right? Will my friends have honorable deaths? And the leader of the Turbans, I think actually gives him some of the best advice I've ever. It's actually one of the highlight talking moments in this show. One of the very few.
There's like 4.
Yeah. But he points out to Orga that, you're worried about your friends having an honorable death. You keep calling them your friends, but the way you treat them, the way you're concerned about them, that's not friends. That's family. And that's a big thing for him because he, on his ship, he views all of the people on it as his family. It's also quite literal.
Yeah, he the leader of the Turbans, literally has a harem of beautiful women that are all super loyal and super in love with him.
Yeah.
And he wears a white suit, which is really cool looking, but he has a harem.
But after that conversation, you really see that's really where you start seeing that change in Orga, because he starts sort of modeling himself after him. And like even after like his existential crisis that Mikazuki helps him through, that's really where you see this final transformation for him. Because and I like this sort of like, they make 2 points at the beginning of the show and at the end of the show that are the same one, which is where he's asking the children if they want to fight. Except the first time he was fully aware that they were in a situation where there wasn't an option for them to say no. There was no saying no to rebelling. There was no saying no to fighting back. At the end of the show, he asks the same question, but this time there is a choice to back away, and it's okay. It's accepted. If you want to leave, no one's going to think badly of you. No one's going to... And I think that's really powerful for him. And really good.
Oh, that was definitely like my favorite part of the end of the series, because it's such a good contrast to the beginning where they're forced into all the battles and they have to, or not all the battles, but they're forced into what they have to do because they're child soldiers that are under control of this military organization. And then at the end, they are given a choice. Everyone has a choice.
Yeah. I think he really gets to that point also because he spends a lot of time talking with Cordelia and getting her viewpoints on the political atmosphere of the world, and even how she handles political situations and people's choices and decisions. And I think that's really where he's pulling a lot of that from. And I think honestly, for me, the funniest thing is that when they're fighting up against Gallahorn, there's this character, McGillis, who's sort of one of the major players that we see, who manipulates him the whole time. Puts him in situations, like, sets up his situations to have these crisis of faith moments, basically. I think, personally, I found that really funny.
And he's playing both sides beautifully, where no matter what happens, he's going to benefit from it.
Yeah.
Because he needs to make sure he's constantly testing him to educate him on how to be the leader that's necessary to accomplish the goals. And the character that's behind it all, you meet him right in the beginning. He's a part of Gallahorn's inspection bureau, and he's a member of one of the noble families, the Seven Stars. His character's so cool with everything he does. When you first meet him and he's inspecting the Gallahorn's operations on Mars.
Yeah.
How he handles Mikazuki when he meets him, when him and Galio accidentally hit Biscuit's little sister's cookie and cracker.
They didn't actually hit him. They nearly did.
Yeah. How he handles that and able to talk his way out of the situation. And then how he manipulates every situation he's in, he's very blunt in his revolutionary thoughts and calling out basically all the nonsense that for lack of a better term, kind of the religious zealotry that Gallahorn has used to prop itself up and be like a pseudo military dictatorship, and he represents a really cool character that I wish was the lead of the show or had a heck of a lot more screen time. But then it turns out at the end of the show, it turns out he was manipulating everything. He was playing both sides. And then he fights Galio. and just has one of the coldest lines
Yeah.
that I absolutely love. Right where he tells Galio, like, "Don't worry, I'll take care of your little sister." And just the amount of savvy in that, where he's just marrying this, what he's engaged, it's a royal family engagement thing, and he's marrying Galio's little sister, who's like 12, but or she's even younger than that.
I think she's like 7 or 8.
But and he's really nice to her, and you can see that he's just doing it all for political means to get into Galio's fam, because Galio's a member of the Seven Stars, and like a really powerful family.
Yeah.
And when he kills him, like, you just like it concludes like his arc so well.
It does.
And I love that about his character as opposed to Galio, who is not a good character.
No, not at all. He's a pawn. He gets used every step of the way, and I also don't understand, like, because at the beginning of the show they work together the whole time, and then when they disappear, all of a sudden when they do start reappearing, they're completely separated. They're doing their own jobs now, like not even doing their own jobs. Like Galio's still working, and McGillis is taking vacation, although he's really not, because he's actually been on screen a whole lot more wearing a mask, which Galio is apparently the only one surprised by this.
Yeah.
Everyone else kind of figures it out, or when they do find it out, they're like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. Yeah. Their shock is mild at best.
Yeah, it's like everyone turns into Mikazuki except for
Mikazuki.
Yeah.
Mikazuki's the one who, like, when Mikazuki sees him, is like,
"Oh, you're
Kid-Man."
He immediately, because he recognizes the voice.
No, he recognizes his smell.
Oh yeah.
Because Mikazuki's a sort of primal character,
Yeah.
so his senses are heightened. But it's just kind of ridiculous. Mikazuki's the one person that gets it, and everyone else is
And
mildly
spoils it, actually.
Yeah.
And that's actually, I didn't even think about how bad of a choice that is. Especially when he reveals himself, it's done, and like he's like, ha-ha!
Yeah, it's done in the ha-ha way, which which has been done much better in other Gundam series, because they've had the characters that have a presentation face and then wear a mask to do things and take off the mask to reveal who they really are, and it's done so much better in other ones. But in this one, no, it's, Galio's the only one that doesn't know anything and is shocked and surprised, and the entire reason Galio is doing things is because he took on, one, it's part of his job, but his main push for doing all of this is because he took on a younger member in Galahorn called Ein, who is the worst character in this show. Like, a lot of them are bad. In my opinion, Ein is the worst, because Ein starts off being a generic soldier that follows his commander. I believe his name was Lieutenant Crank. And when they, because he's part of the group that first attacks CGS at the very beginning, and he agrees with Crank not wanting to kill kids, and then Crank goes, and mind you, Crank has an honorable fight and an honorable death, but Ein goes, nope, all these children must die.
They murdered him.
All of the children of Tekkadan must die. All of a sudden, none of them are innocent. He doesn't care about I get it if he wanted to kill just Mikazuki. That would vaguely make sense to me. But he wants to kill all of the children of Tekkadan because all of a sudden they're all guilty of it. Even though that makes no sense. And he's just terrible because, that's his driving forces. I need to kill Tekkadan. I need to kill Tekkadan. I need to all of a sudden kill children. Even though at the beginning he was against it. So much so that he ends up getting brutally damaged at one point in a fight with Mikazuki,
who provokes numerous characters to want him dead, and then he proceeds to kill them immediately.
Yeah.
That are very interesting characters.
Oh, absolutely. They're far more interesting than he is. But Ein, thanks to the help of McGillis, ends up being this, half-person, half-robot thing. He gets implanted with this thing called the Alea Vijnana system, which is what the members of Tekkadan have. For them, it's these 3 little whiskers on their back that lets them connect to the robots and control them better. And it's technically banned, in Galahorn, it's banned technology because it enhances the senses of when you're using combat drone or the combat robots and everything. And it's just a huge threat, which is what Mikazuki has. That's why he's so badass. But for Ein, McGillis turns him into this quote-unquote idealized version of the Alea Vignana system, slaps him in a Gundam frame that no one ever talks about or mentions what it's called.
But it's part of his ancestral family's Gundam, because
Yeah.
that's how powerful and important his family is. Their ancient connections. They're using that's the problem.
It's
with
blood
Galio.
convenience. That's all it is for him.
Well, that's the problem with Galio, is that he's like the embodiment of what the idealized version of Galahorn is.
Yeah.
And then he's willing to use this technology that they're forbidden. And
just to keep Ein alive so he can get his revenge. That's the whole motivation, is let me throw out all of my ideals so this one person can get his revenge.
Yeah, and then Ein doesn't make any sense and there's no rational thinking.
No, he immediately goes insane.
Yeah. And then just has the silliest fights. And the sad thing is, they're basically it's like they took a wonderful character from Code Geass Suzaku.
Yeah.
Where they cut him in half, took out all the substance, and just made him a crazy person, because Einik descends from Martians. That's what makes him so important. He's a Martian.
He's half Martian.
He's half Martian. Who's in Galahorn because his mother or father was part of.
Yeah,
so he's familial ties that enabled him to get in, and he just has no attachment to it. But he has that initially you get the sense of him having the same ideal as like Suzaku, where he thinks that they need to change things from the inside. I'm going to show that. And they also, in the most recent season of Attack on Titan, with the girl who killed Potato Girl, where they want to show that, no, they're not so bad. Except for both those shows, Code Geass and Attack on Titan Season 4, did way better with those characters.
Infinitely better.
And it's absolutely terrible.
Yeah, especially since like once Ein is part robot, all of his ideals are gone. All the rules he should follow, he throws out and goes on a rampage, and it's bad character.
Yeah, and there's
sorry, I do not like him.
Yeah, he is really bad, and that's where like McGillis had to call like the amount of convenience.
Oh yeah,
that can't come into his plan, to where how fragile. Like if you want to see fragile plans, McGillis had assumed that Ein would go nuts and go into the city, which would totally shame Galahorn and also demonstrate that they need to change to be able to stand up to anyone who can get their hands on a proper Gundam frame. Because they've
not strictly the Gundam frames in particular, but it's specifically the Alea Vignana system. Because even if you put that in a regular mech, your battle performance will shoot through the roof.
Yeah.
Because you're kind of mind linked with the robot in a sort of way.
Yeah, well, and the fact that he has to go crazy, just go right into the city to go at, because for some reason he's like, oh, I'm fighting the guy who killed my crank. You know what? I'm gonna go after Cordelia now.
Yeah, because he hears Cordelia's in the city, and it's like, oh, it's all of a sudden all her like inconsistent.
And Cordelia, like, she is actually one of the saving graces of this show.
Yeah.
And I hated her at first. She was at Sansa Stark wet blanket level of bad at first.
Oh, absolutely.
Then her arc just totally transformed my opinion of her, and actually made like her usually I'm not interested in her parts like that. And she really did well, where she starts out as this innocent, naive girl with all this idealism. And then as like things happen, they slowly show that she's willing to get her hands dirty. She's going to get in on the action. She's not just all talk. She truly believes what she's saying. They show that she can actually talk, and her speeches are lame, but I mean, except for
but all the speeches in this are like,
for the convenience of the plot, it makes absolute sense that that her speeches work because of where they're going with her.
Yeah.
And then she gets saved by like one of the most key crucial moments of the first steps of like a major transformation of hers, when she finds out that her assistant, who you know right away as soon as you see her, she's a bad guy, or at least they're working for the bad guys in some way. Like she's gonna betray her, and then she does.
Of course.
And then she's like in denial, which is actually pretty cool.
It makes sense though, because they explain that they've been together for many, many years.
You get a nice flashback of her maid's perspective.
Yeah.
And then her maid Deus Exes to save Cordelia from being shot by a sniper. And in
Yeah.
Deus Ex,
It absolutely is.
she's on one of the launch pads for the colony to go back to Mars or wherever she works for, and they shut that down. And then she suddenly has a moment of suddenly her conscience overtakes her because they show that she's constantly struggling with this. Even in the flashback, she's constantly struggling with the test. She has to betray this little girl that she's basically been with since she was a little kid.
Yeah.
Even though they also show that she created in her mind that she reasons to hate her.
Yeah.
And that's really cool. But then she just magically, I gotta get out of here, and then I'm gonna take a sniper bullet for you.
Yeah.
So she knows where the sniper is, and then she gets shot, and then they don't just shoot again. We can't just go pow pow.
Yeah.
You can't fire a couple times.
You'd give away your position, man. Don't you know that?
And that's where, and then
or plot armor.
Yeah. But then she goes through this existential crisis after that, and she's crying all the time. And normally I'm like, I don't need to see this all the time, but it makes sense for a character. They don't overdo it.
Yeah.
And people other characters interact with her and help make her realize the whole reason she's doing what she's doing, and it encourage her, and she redoubles her efforts and gets far more confident, far more strong-willed, which she already was strong-willed. And then by the end, she is almost cold to she still has the impact of the feelings, but she's hardened to it, and you can see that with her decisions. One of the best examples of her growth is right around the end. Mikazuki is in a battle.
Oh yes, I know what this is. Sorry. I love this one. I'm apologies for cutting you off, but I love this because it's Mikazuki fighting some people from Galahorn, but throughout the show, especially with the little children of Tekkadan, the probably 5 and under, Cordelia has always been a little overprotective of them, and constantly going to Mikazuki or Orga or anyone that had any sort of say and going, please don't let the children fight, please don't let the... And while this fight's going on, you see all the little kids outside watching it, and it's really amazing because she tries to get them to go inside. It's dangerous, it's unsafe, and a couple of the kids speak up and say, we won't do that, this is our fight too. They're our enemy. We need to see what Mikazuki does to them. And it's one of the times where facial features actually look good in this show, because they show her face close up, and you can see it break her heart. But you also get the sense that she understands where they're coming from, especially since she's also been dealing with a lot of the same problems of wanting to... I think it helps her recognize her own weakness in that moment, because up until then, periodically when things are getting hard, she's constantly contemplating giving up and running away, or is this worth it? And I think this is really the ending foundation block for her to really accept the consequences of her idealism, because what she wants is the freedom of Mars, and later on she ends up wanting the freedom of anyone that's downtrodden and beaten down by Earth's government or Galahorn. Anyone that feels unwanted, she wants their freedom so that they can grow and hopefully have a better life. But up until now, she's had to deal with the death and destruction that that idealism causes. And this is the moment where I personally felt that this is really where she understood that matters. You can't run away from the death. You can't run away from the destruction. You can't hide from it if you want to complete your goals. You don't have to like it, because you can't
dishonor the sacrifices that the people who are fighting for you are making.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's basically what they say. It's one of the few good lines.
Again, yeah.
Not a whole lot of them.
Not a whole lot.
and
There's 2 others.
To conclude everything, the world building is definitely one of the weakest parts, where it's so inconsistent. The Galahorn's like the way their politics work is inconsistent. Where sometimes this guy's important, sometimes he's not.
Or the fact that the 7 stars exist and do nothing ever.
Yeah, and have no relevance, and they like
other than to be mentioned.
Yeah, and then you have no sense of where anything is, and where they're even though they kind of tell you like, oh, we're going towards Jupiter, we're on Mars, we're on the station, we're in Dock 3.
Yeah, but you never know how much time passes.
Yeah, and they clearly,
except for once. They say it's been 3 months.
Yeah, when they're in space, they say it's 3 months. The rest of the time, they make no mention of the time frame, how long, and also when they're having the battle and they've been fighting for 3 days.
Yeah, all of a sudden the battle is like 3 days in. It's just
And that's another thing. Gallahorn's supposed to be this powerful military force, and there's a fight going on for 3 days, and there's no reinforcements. And they make subtle mentions of it, but you'd think they'd be pumping more. Like, it's so inconsistent when they're supposed to be something that they're clearly not. And that's not the criticisms that McGillis is, like, going for. He's just like, they just need to be reconstructed because they're not getting with the times. And I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah.
And one of the few highlights of the show is the music I really enjoyed the music.
Oh, I love the music. Like, that's probably one of the few things that like kept me engaged in this show. And I felt for me made some of the battles a lot more fun to watch.
And it didn't, and there was never never bad music that was out of place. The worst choice that they made in this show was there's absolutely no real sense of risk. Like that, to just finalize the world building problems. Like there never feels a sense of risk. No one important dies. Everyone is too important to the plot and they make it clear that if they die, this isn't going to work. And you know they're not going to die, and it's obvious when the few characters who do die are going to die. Like there's one of the most interesting characters that they give almost no attention to. Akihiro is like, I have a brother, and I've never told anyone about this, but I've been looking for him. And then his brother is in a rival group, and then they fight him, and he dies in the next episode, or maybe 2 episodes from then. But I'm pretty sure it's the next episode. It's like literally 2 episodes, and he mentions it, and it's just like there's some filler. Just cut right out and it wouldn't make any difference. And no one important dies, and that's definitely the worst choice that they made. Is there's no accountability there's no.
Whoa. What do you mean? They killed Biscuit.
Here's your biscuit.
Thank you for watching. We'd love to hear what you thought about the season down below. And while you're down there, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon.
If you're interested in joining us gaming, check us out on Twitch. Follow us on Twitter for updates. Links are in the description down below.